Imagine you're sitting in a restaurant. The waiter hands you a menu, you glance over it for a minute or two, the burger catches your eye. So does the pasta. The salad is there too, I guess. But eventually you make your choice. You order the burger. Simple enough. But here's a question. Why? Why did you order that? Seriously. Most people would probably answer, because I wanted the burger. Fair enough. But why did you want the burger? Maybe because you like burgers. But why do you like burgers? Maybe because you've eaten them before. Maybe because you had good experiences with them. Maybe because you're a big back. Maybe they remind you of childhood. Maybe your body is craving junk food. The deeper I go, the stranger the question becomes. Because every answer seems to point toward another answer. Every reason seems to have another reason behind it. And eventually I find myself wondering something that sounds almost ridiculous. At what point did I actually make the choice? I've been thinking about this question for a while. Not because I have some grand theory about free will. I don't. In fact, by the end of this video, you'll probably see why I'm not even sure what I think about free will anymore. What caught my attention was something much simpler. Every time I tried to isolate a choice, to find the exact moment where I supposedly made a decision, I kept finding things that seemed to influence it. My preferences, my experiences, my upbringing, my mood, my circumstances. And once I noticed that, it became difficult to ignore, because the more closely I looked at my choices, the less they seemed to exist in isolation. If a glass shatters on the floor, there's usually a reason. Maybe somebody knocked it over. Maybe the table was unstable. Maybe the floor was uneven. Maybe somebody built the table incorrectly 20 years ago. The explanations keep branching out. The same thing happens with people. A person becomes a musician. Why? Maybe their parents bought them a guitar. Maybe they heard a song that changed their life. Maybe they met somebody who inspired them. Maybe 1,000 tiny events pushed them in that direction. At first, this just sounds like common sense. Of course things have causes. What else would they have? But the more I thought about it, the stranger it became. Because if every event is connected to previous events, then every event is part of a chain. And if that's true, then my decision to order a burger wasn't an isolated event at all. It was another link in a chain that stretches backward long before I was born. This way of looking at the world has a name: determinism. It's basically the idea that every event is the result of prior events. The present emerges from the past, and the future emerges from the present, like dominoes falling into one another, or links in a chain. And I have to admit, there's something compelling about this picture, because the more I look for causes, the more I seem to find them. Take almost any event and start asking why. Why did I order the burger? Because I wanted it. Why did I want it? Because of my preferences. Why do I have those preferences? Because of experiences I've had. Why did I have those experiences? Because of events that happened before I was born. The chain keeps stretching backward, past yesterday, past childhood, past my parents, past my grandparents, past recorded history. And once you start looking at things this way, and if you have a mental illness like me, it's difficult to stop. A friendship forms because two people happen to meet. They happen to meet because they happen to be in the same place. They happen to be in the same place because of countless decisions and events that came before. A kingdom rises, a kingdom falls. A war begins, a star explodes. Every event appears tied to a previous one. like a vast web of causes stretching across time. Maybe things couldn't have happened any other way. Maybe every moment was shaped by the moments that came before it. Maybe my choice wasn't as free as it felt. And that's when a question occurred to me. If every event is caused by a previous event, where does the chain begin? As it turns out, I'm not the first person to run into this problem. People have been staring at this wall for thousands of years. Take Aristotle. He looked at the world and saw motion everywhere. Things moving other things. One event producing another. One cause leading to another cause. But eventually he ran into the same problem. If everything that moves is moved by something else, where does the chain start? His answer was what he called the unmoved mover. Something that started the chain without itself being moved. Centuries later, Thomas Aquinas arrived at a similar conclusion. He looked at causes and effects and asked a simple question. If every cause requires a prior cause, then why isn't the chain infinite? His answer was that there must be a first cause, something that caused everything else while itself remaining uncaused. And for Aquinas, that first cause was God. And then there was Isaac Newton. Newton wasn't searching for a first cause. He was trying to understand motion. But his universe was still a universe of causes. For every effect, there was an explanation. For every motion, there was a force. The chain remained intact. Different thinkers, different centuries, different goals. Yet somehow they all found themselves staring at the same mystery. The chain of causes seemed impossible to deny. And yet, the moment you follow it far enough, you arrive at a question that refuses to go away. What caused the first cause? And that's where things start getting strange, because every answer seems to create another question. God created the universe. Okay, but what created God? Or the Big Bang created the universe. Okay, but what caused the Big Bang? Reality simply exists. Okay, but why? Eventually, I started noticing something strange. Every answer seems to disappoint me. Not because the answers are bad, because they never felt final. If God is the first cause, I want to ask what caused God? If the Big Bang is the beginning, I want to ask what caused the Big Bang? If reality simply exists, I want to ask why? The chain never seems complete. The question always survives. And after a while, I started wondering whether the problem wasn't the answers. Maybe the problem was me. Or more specifically, the way I was thinking. This is where Immanuel Kant enters the story. Kant noticed something that sounds obvious at first, but becomes stranger the more you think about it. Human beings never experience reality directly. Everything we experience passes through the filter of a human mind. The world reaches us through our senses, then our minds organize it, interpret it, make sense of it. In other words, we never encounter reality as it is in itself. We encounter reality as human beings. And once I understood that, a possibility occurred to me. What if the reason I keep demanding another cause isn't because reality requires one? What if it's because my mind does? What if cause and effect is one of the tools through which human beings make sense of the world? A tool so useful, so fundamental, that we begin to mistake it for reality itself. Think about it. Every explanation we ever accepted has taken the same form. Something happened because something else caused it. Cause and effect. It's the lens through which we understand the world. But what if that's exactly the problem? What if we've become so accustomed to seeing reality through that lens that we can no longer imagine any other way of seeing it. A fish doesn't notice the water it swims in. It's too close, it's too familiar, too fundamental to its experience. And maybe causality is like that for us. Maybe it's one of those basic tools the human mind uses to organize reality. Not because reality itself demands it, but because we do. And if that's true, then something very strange happens. The first cause problem begins to look different, because now we're no longer asking, what caused the first cause? We're asking, why am I convinced there must be an answer that looks like a cause? For the first time, I started wondering whether I had mistaken a feature of my own mind for a feature of reality itself. How often do we do that? By the way, I'm not saying that cause and effect is wrong. Clearly it isn't. The question is whether it works all the way down. Whether every event in reality can ultimately be traced back to a prior cause. For most of my life, that felt obvious. Now, I'm not so sure. So where does all of this leave me? Honestly, the next time I'm sitting in a restaurant, staring at a menu, I might try a little experiment. Instead of ordering what I actually want, I'll order something completely random. Something I would never order. Just out of spite. Just to prove to myself that I still hold the cards. That I'm still the one making the choice. Then again, maybe the urge to rebel against determinism was determined too. Maybe that little act of defiance was always part of the chain. At this point, I'm not even sure anymore. Speaking of defiance, though, I'll give you an interesting quote just to wrap this up.
Given the choice, whether to rule a corrupt and failing empire, or to challenge the fates for another throw, a better throw against one's destiny, what was a king to do? But does one ever truly have a choice? One can only match, move by move, the machinations of fate, and thus defy the tyrannous stars.